Hi, I'm Judith Richards. I'm the creator of TRTP. I created this process which resolves anxiety, depression, PTSD, and other trauma-related issues without re-traumatizing, generally in 3 sessions, 3 steps. So I'm often asked, how did you come to create this? What happened? I was asked a little while ago, how long did it take you to come up with it? Was it 6 months, 12 months? I worked out it's about 50 years it took. Yes, life happens. And I found myself in a place where I was desperate to let go of the dreadfulness that had happened to me. And I found that it wouldn't let go of me. Somehow I was optimistic enough to think, well, there must be a way, I just have to find it. And luckily, that's what I did. But there is a big backstory. It's a 50-year story. It's a big one. I'm not going to bore you with all the details of all of that. I'm going to try and condense this just because people are always asking, how did you come up with this? How did you do it? Okay, so here we go. Buckle in, lean in. We all love a good story. We've all got our own story. So this one is mine. This is what happened to me in my life. So I was born when I was very young into a Catholic family in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. I was the 4th daughter, the 8th child. There were 4 boys and 4 girls. My father thought he was terribly clever. He was that kind of guy. He always thought he was clever. He was a bit full of himself. So it was a very noisy, vibrant household with its own complex culture and dynamics, which I'm not going to go into in this podcast. There's too many people involved. I'm not going to talk about my family very much. Suffice to say, it was noisy. It was active. And I was talking to my sister the other night, and she was talking about how she was terrified for me when I was tiny because I was so fragile, so incredibly sensitive, such a heightened startle reflex that she thought I would never survive life. So this startle reflex, I would jump, I would leap with big noises, and there were lots of them. I mean, there's 10 people in the household, plus friends and other people, hangers on. One of my earliest memories is being in the kitchen, large kitchen, with dinner being assembled, nearly ready, and people gathering in the kitchen, drawn by the scent of good food that my mother always provided for all of us, all these hungry mouths with hungry bellies, wondering what's for dinner. And I was there on the floor of the kitchen. And one of my very earliest memories is legs. Legs. I was looking through a forest of legs with everyone gathered there wanting their meal. And someone cracked a joke and, whoa, a burst of laughter. And I just went splat on the floor, that startle reflex. Everyone thought it was humorous except for me, but that's how it was. My father was an interesting man. Interesting covers everything, doesn't it? My father was an interesting man. He set up bomb disposal for the Australian military in New Guinea in the Second World War. He went through a lot. Did you know that trauma is passed on through the generations in the methylation of the DNA? I'm not going to go into a physiology lesson here. Normally I would, but I'm going to hold myself back. We're not going into the physiology of how trauma is passed on, but it is. I was speaking with my sister the other evening. My next sister to me is 9 years older than me. I love her dearly. She was my great comfort growing up. And we were talking about how it gets passed on, and she and I got the truckload of it somehow. And so how it expressed itself in me was I was incredibly sensitive. I had this really heightened startle reflex. I was fragile as anything. So anyway, moving right along. Dad had the usual symptoms. He had nightmares that would wake the household at night. He had a dark cloud over him. Another early memory was I was going to the bathroom deep in the night as a tiny person, and Dad would be doing his normal thing, walking up and down the hallway in the darkness, chain smoking. And I asked him, "Why? What are you doing? Why do you do this?" And he said, "In the war, I sent many men to their deaths, and they haunt me." That stayed with me the rest of my life. So yeah, trauma is passed down from generation to generation, and sure, I got my share. As I said, our family had complex dynamics. Suffice to say that I wasn't safe. That's all I'm going to say. I was not safe in my family home. And we were Catholic. And so a number of priests would take a keen interest. These were high up priests, like one priest who ran the Marist priests organizations who would come and stay. These priests would come and stay at our place. And that wasn't good for me either. I was not safe. These priests would take a keen interest in me and some of my siblings. When I was very young, I reported an incident. Please don't make me sit on Father Peter's lap. And was told, what did you do to that good man of God to make him do that? When we're little, these first 7 years are so critical to the rest of our lives. They set us up for the entire rest of our lives. And so as a tiny person being told that I was the one who caused that man to do something bad, I took on the idea there's something wrong with me. I'm going to go to hell. I'm a bad person. I deserve to. Okay, so basically, I'm shit. I deserve to be treated like shit. Sorry, I'm cursing. But the language of trauma is raw. It's real. I took on the ideas I deserve to suffer. I deserve to be punished. That became the story of my life until, like in my late teens, I just about introduced myself. Hi, I'm Judith. I attract violent lunatics. What can I say? It's a gift. But those first 7 years are critical. And the programs I took on, because like the software is installed. We have no critical facility to go, oh, well, that's that person's stuff. It's not mine. Oh, Mum's having a bad day today. I just won't take any notice of that. It's not true. No. What happens is the critical facility has stepped aside. We haven't got one yet. We haven't got a critical facility yet. We're just babies. And we are a sponge, and everything just goes straight in. Either what somebody in authority says to us or our tiny person's perception of what's going on. So we can be 70 and still operating from the system that was installed when we were 3, from that little 3-year-old's perception of what was going on. I don't matter. It runs everything. For myself, I'm shit. I deserve to be treated like shit. So what happened? I manifested that for decades. I was an abuse magnet. In psychology, they talk about re-victimization. If someone is abused when they're young, it sets up a system of re-victimization. How? Because that software goes in, those core, I call them unconscious core beliefs. I've told you the ones I took on. I don't matter. I'm shit. I deserve to be treated like shit. I deserve to suffer. I deserve to be punished. Hello? Look down the railroad tracks of my life, and that's exactly everything that happened to me. Abuse. It's just how it works. So you can look at your own life and see, well, what's the pattern? What ideas did you take on that became your core unconscious beliefs when you were little? And good news, we can change them. That's what we do in TRTP in session 1. We find what are the unconscious core beliefs that are not helpful, that have set up the patterns in your life. And let's change those so that the future patterns are completely different. Have you had enough? Good. Let's change it. That's the good news. Okay, so my dad obviously had high functioning PTSD. He was the managing director of a large engineering manufacturing business. So we were lucky. We had enough money. So I grew up in this big, interesting family. Interesting is a word, it comes up a lot, doesn't it? It covers everything. Yeah, it was interesting. It was violent. My father was rarely violent. He was occasionally, but it was violent. Enough said. I went to school. I went to school, and the nuns in the small little convent school where I went to school, where my brothers and sisters had gone to school, it was a cruel environment, and I was not safe there either. By year 3, I went to my big sister's school. She was doing year 12. I wanted to be at the same school as my sister. And so my mum arranged it wonderfully. And so that was interesting. Oh, look, there's that bloody word again, isn't it? It was cruel. It was very cruel. And of course, I had the programming. I'm shit and I deserve to be treated like shit. I deserve to suffer. I deserve to be punished. I don't matter. And so what happened? I was the one in every class that was singled out to be humiliated, to be punished, to be treated with cruelty. You know, I remember by about year 9, how old was I then? 12, 13. The deputy principal took a keen interest in me and a keen dislike, and used to delight in locking me in cupboards for some reason with lists of numbers, long numbers, many digits to add up in the nearly dark confines of the cupboard, and not allowed out to go to the bathroom. At this time, it's interesting, I developed migraines. There was lots of things going on at home as well, which I won't go into. I developed migraines. Also, there was a nun who groomed me in my early teen years and sexually abused me. And after all of that, one day at school, I went numb down one side. I could hardly speak because my tongue was numb. I couldn't see properly. I could only see peripherally. I couldn't judge distance. I thought I was dying. Turned out it was my first migraine. I was sent to the deputy principal, who was in charge of sick people, and she made me lie down on the very dark, nearly black timber floor of her office. I remember it so well, and I remember the smell of the wood polish. It had previously been my year 5 classroom. My year 5 classroom. Yes. Now that was a year. That was the year I decided to declare war on the authorities of the school, declare war on the nuns. Because I'd been blowing in the lid of my pen, doing my sums. You know, kids do, you know. And this nun came up behind me and whacked me over the head with a book and sent me out onto the tennis courts. All the classrooms were around this set of tennis courts, and I had to go onto the bitumen tennis court with my shoes and socks off, walking all around the outside of the bitumen tennis court, where everyone could see me from all the classrooms while I blew into the lid of my pen to show how stupid I was. It was the middle of summer in Brisbane, Queensland. The bitumen was melting in the heat. By the end of it, I had really bad burns on the soles of my feet. And at that point, I declared war. No more Mr. Nice Guy. This is going to be war. And that's how it went from there. War. Me against the nuns. Me standing up for kids who couldn't stand up for themselves, whether they wanted to be stood up for or not. I was the caped crusader. For some reason, the nuns didn't like me. And it ended up with me being locked in cupboards a fair bit. But anyway, that's what happens, isn't it? I got mine back. I used to have really bad endometriosis, which involved a lot of vomiting and a lot of fainting and an awful lot of pain. And one day I was dragged in front of her desk, big girl under each arm, and I got my revenge. It was after lunch. I'd had orange juice, a salad roll, an apple, and up it all came. And I aimed it right across her desk and her papers. And the rivulets trickled down onto that dark timber floor, and I was filled with joy. Moving right along. Okay, so there was school, and it was not safe. It was difficult. It was war. And at the same time, outside of school, I attracted attention. Even though I dressed to completely cover myself up, my uniform was jeans, a t-shirt, and volley sand shoes. And in winter, the t-shirt would be changed for a sweatshirt. I never wanted to draw attention to myself because attention wasn't good. I decided very early on that it was not safe to be a girl. So anyway, moving right along. The last day of school, I was joyful. My friend, since we were 12, and I looked at all these girls crying about leaving school and thought, what the heck are they going on about? We were so relieved. And then we both went to the Conservatory of Music for 4 years. Music, learning musical instruments, is a very good thing. It uses more of the brain than anything else. And it teaches discipline, and it teaches waiting. Because you don't get the results straight away. There is no such thing as instant gratification when you're a musician. You work your ass off. And so that was good for me. During my time at the Conservatory of Music, I learnt lighting and stage management. The director of the opera school took me under his wing and taught me all of this. And that became my greatest interest, more than performing. So when I graduated, I very quickly got a job as the stage manager at Queensland Opera Company. This was in the early 1980s. The theatre world in Australia was incredibly misogynistic. It was brutal. It was violent. I was about 22. I looked about 13. And I had this big crew of males to order around and tell them what to do, and they didn't like it. So there was a lot of assault. Yeah, it was pretty brutal. At the end of all of that, and then I did a stint with Australian Opera and WA and around the place. At the end of that, I decided I wanted to work with healthy people who live their lives during the day, not just at night, who hadn't had decades to develop their major egos and their issues. So I went and studied sports physiology, didn't I? I didn't finish that degree. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't finish it. Because my pattern of abusive relationships got in the way. You know how I said that in those first 7 years I took on the ideas, I don't matter, I'm shit, I deserve to be treated like shit, I deserve to suffer, I deserve to be punished. Well, welcome to my love life or lack of love life. So I got married. I had a beautiful, beautiful baby boy. I was so blessed. I left that marriage. I found myself in a dire situation with another man who was very, very violent. And I had to get my son out of there. So I put him with his dad, thinking he'd be loved and protected and safe. And he wasn't. Let me just say, He was the absolute extreme opposite of that. I don't know what I can say publicly. He suffered horrendously. Oh, I got him back when he was 12. It was a struggle to get him back, but I got him back. And he was what I call fifth, fucked in the head. That's a technical term, I think. I took him to youth mental health services, etc. We came home one day. I said, they've got no idea. But we are capable and intelligent. There is a way. We're going to find it. I took him out of school. The rest of my family was screaming at me how irresponsible I was. I saved his life. He's now 35. He's doing really well. Just letting you know. Married, 2 kids, doing well in his career. A leader. So, yeah, dreadfulness continued to happen. And in this era of my life, in my 30s, there was a lot of physical damage. Enough said. At the end of that, my friend since we were 12, who I spoke about before, basically came to the other side of the country I lived in Australia and found me and basically took me to her place and nursed me over a year or more while I had a lot of major surgery to put my body back together again. And the surgeon said at the end of that, you know, you'll be in chronic ill health and chronic pain for the rest of your probably very short life. That was in 99. I got my son back at the end of that year. And so that's what happened. My body went into complete breakdown. I was dreadfully, dreadfully ill. I was full of golden staph. I kept being opened up and drained, and lungs collapsed, full of fluid. You know, it was just everything that could go wrong went wrong. And then once I started to recover physically, I mean, I couldn't walk properly. I had my falling down pain. My son used to take me around in the wheelbarrow for a while because I couldn't walk. So there's a lot of physical damage. And at the end of that, that's when I really fell apart. Not physically, but I'd been in and out of hospital in the small village where I lived in the hinterland of the Sunshine Coast, Queensland. And the guy running the hospital, Ted, he was a fabulous doctor. Wonderful. He helped me so much with my body. And then I went to him one day. I said, I think I'm losing my mind. He said, what makes you think that? And I told him, he said, yeah, you are. And I said, okay, well, I'm not going to come back because I don't want you to have to put me in hospital. I don't want to go down that route. I want enough of my brain aware so that I can find the way. Because he said, I'd write you out 3 prescriptions now if I thought you'd take them. But I know you won't. I said, no, I have to find the way through this. I see him occasionally in the street these days. He walks by and with a wry grin says, you're a statistical freak. Yep. So I lost my mind. I woke up one day and I felt drunk. But I didn't drink. I didn't have any money to buy alcohol. I hardly had any money to buy food. I was broke. I was bankrupt. I had no car. I was on a disability pension from the government. I had nothing. And it was really weird because the floor was moving as I walked across it. And I thought, I know. We all know, don't we? A cup of tea will fix it. A cup of tea will fix anything. So I thought, if I could just have a cup of tea, everything will settle down. I'll be fine. So I went into the kitchen. And that's as far as I got. And I was thinking, cup. cup, cup, cup. Just get a cup. Have a cup of tea. You'll be fine. Cup, cup. It was like I was stuck in this loop. I thought, something's not connecting. This is not good. Just get a cup. Make a cup of tea. You'll be fine. Cup, 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 cup. And then it was nighttime. I thought, oh dear, this is not good. This is not good. Something's not connecting. And I went downhill from there into a complete PTSD breakdown, several personalities, living in hallucinations, living in psychosis. Did you know that you can have hallucinations that aren't visual? I used to have a lot of scent hallucinations. Anyway, I won't go into that. But yeah, I went downhill with a big bang to the point where the young people, the teenagers in that village in the hinterland of Sunshine Coast, it was Mullaney, some people will know that place, called me the Mad Beanie Lady. I lived above the shops. I was the only person living in town above the shops. And I would go up and down the street on many days, talking 1,000 miles an hour, saying the same thing again and again and again and again, with a beanie. And, you know, my clothes got dirtier, and typical mad woman, Mad Beanie Lady. I have a friend who still calls me MBL, Mad Beanie Lady. MBL. Hey, MBL, how are you going? But what happened was I found a way through. And people saw me go from that dirty beanie, really skinny, obviously mad, saw me go from that to what you see here. I'm pretty good. And what happened was they started bringing their loved ones. And I would just put them through what I had done to fix myself, and they'd get well. And then more people came, and more people came. And eventually I was asked to speak. There was a trauma thing on, and the speaker was in hospital, couldn't be there. So they invited me to go and speak instead. And at the end of that, people wanted to learn from me. And I said, I don't teach. And the first guy in the queue said, well, you do now. That was Steve Gardner. He's a TRTP practitioner. He was in my first class. In that first class of only 12 people, there was a psychiatrist who specialized in PTSD. She herself had really bad PTSD. I thought she had Parkinson's, because with extreme PTSD, you sometimes get this tremor like Parkinson's, and she had that. But we did the process, and her PTSD, her tremor, disappeared. She cleared her books in about 5 weeks with the TRTP training, so much so that the receptionists in the medical center where she practiced, big medical center, sent a delegation to ask her, what are you prescribing now? Is it legal, and are we implicated by being on the premises? We've been seeing your patients coming for years and years, and now they're walking out well. What are you doing in there? Is there going to be a drug bust? So there we are. That's basically the story of how I came to create TRTP. I had to decide when I lost my mind, whether I would just let go and disappear into insanity, or whether I would choose to be well and come back into the world, which to me was a very frightening and dangerous place. It would have been easy to let go. So easy. But I didn't. I chose to come back. And in order to do that, I had to find peace. I was desperate to let what had happened to me, to let it go. I wanted to let it go, but it wouldn't let me go until I found the way. And that's what happened. So I didn't plan on all of this. It just happened. People saw me get well. They saw me go mad. They saw me get well. They brought their loved ones to me. They got well. More people came. They got well. I did that presentation. More people came to be taught. And then they went and got the same results as I had achieved with people getting well. And then more people came and more people came. And there we are. And here we are with TRTP. I've now trained nearly 1,000 practitioners. We're going into the United States. The stories that I hear every day are extraordinary. We don't have to be in so much pain. We don't. So this podcast is for everyone. Knowledge is power, and we all need more knowledge. We need to do things better. We need to do mental health better. So this is for you if you're facing your own mental health challenges or somebody that you love. It's for practitioners, mental health people, health practitioners. Let's choose. I spoke about how it was my unconscious core beliefs that was set down when I was little that caused the pattern of abuse in my life. We all have those patterns set down by our unconscious core beliefs we took on when we were young. We don't choose one day to wake up and sabotage our life, our career, our relationships. It's not what we do. We're not silly, but we make these choices. We do these things unconsciously. So how can we make the unconscious conscious? Let's choose. So that's why this podcast is called I Choose, because we get to choose, nobody else. Us. That's our superpower. So join me, hit subscribe and hit notifications so you know when each week I'm putting up another podcast so that you get notified, and tell your friends. Thank you. Thanks for your time.